As a cartoonist, I love line art. A lot of my students ask me how to get better at line art, and in this video, I'm going to share my top 4 tips. These are digital line art tips, but the concepts can also apply to traditional pen and ink drawing. Line art. Use your stabilization and smoothing. Every program has it. So over here on Clip Studio, we have stabilization. On Photoshop, it's called smoothing. On Medibang, it's called correction, I believe. It has a bunch of different names, but what it does is it slows down your brush so that it has a bit of a lag to it. So without stabilization, my brush moves immediately. With stabilization, my brush does not move immediately, so it smooths out. So again, if I try to straight line, no stabilization, straight line with stabilization, you can see the slight bit of lag that happens with it. Use your stabilization and smoothing as much as possible, but don't rely on it. That's my biggest tip. You should practice without your smoothing and stabilization as well. It's good to have it, and I use it all the time, but by relying on your smoothing too much, you focus too hard on the perfection and you lose your gesture, you lose your movement. Especially if you're working with a character that has a lot of action. If you try and keep your smoothing as high as possible, it'll end up making the action kind of lose. Let me sketch in something really quick. This is my chibi style. This is how I work quick. A lot of people like to keep their stabilization really high. Let's say that I did that. Let's say that I kept my stabilization really high and I moved really slow for this line art. Really nice and clean. Some people really love really smooth, slow line work, which is totally fine. I too love slowing down with my line work sometimes. So this one is nice and slowed down with the stabilization. It's nice, it's smooth, it's really, really great. But it slightly loses the action, right? It makes it a bit too clean. Without the stabilization, I can really get in there and mess around and make this feel... It has a bit of a different movement to it when I have to move quick. Because in order to make your lines feel smooth, without stabilization, you have to move fast. The faster you move, the smoother your lines will become. And with the urgency of the pose comes the urgency of the line art. And you feel that energy through it. When your line art is done slow, you'll be able to feel that slowness through it. When your line art is done faster, you'll be able to feel that speed. So it usually is a lot nicer when you work without it for faster, more urgent poses. If you'd like to support the channel and the creation of free arts education, become a member on Patreon. Let me give a more slowed example where I had to work on a more intense pose. So a nice and slowed down page, all of these lines were done with stabilization on. So I needed to keep it nice and smooth, wanted to keep it nice and stationary, keep it all nice and clean. But once I got to my action poses, I turned my stabilization off and started making my lines feel more urgent. Added some mess in there, made it a bit more, made the lines feel more urgent, made them have no stabilization at all, made it as as intense and messy as I could to make it feel more urgent. So I think it's great to add stabilization. Stabilization is a great tool. Use it as much as you can, use it as much as you want, but don't rely on it. Because sometimes when you stick to just one kind of line art for everything, that it makes everything a bit too stiff. So experiment with no stabilization. Experiment with non-clean line work. Line weighting. Right, so learn to control your wrist for line weighting. If you have to press too hard for a thicker line, change your pressure sensitivity settings. Thicker lines around a silhouette make all illustrations better. So learn to control your wrist, learn to control when you should press lighter, how to press harder, get a feel for your pen. Eventually you gotta learn, you have to understand how your pen works. You need to know how to press at the right times, how to press not at the right times. It is very much practice. I can't give you any other tips other than, you gotta practice with your own pen. Learn to control your wrist for line weighting. It goes in tandem with you gotta move faster. The quicker you work, the easier it is to focus on your line weighting rather than making it smooth. So line weighting isn't essential, but you do need to come up with a solution to differentiate your lines from one another. This is usually done with colored lines. Line weighting isn't essential. You don't necessarily have to have a lot of line weight with your illustrations, but if you don't have a lot of line weight, then you need to figure out a different solution for differentiating the line art from one another. Because when they're all the exact same weighting, that line art will compete with itself, right? If you have the exact same weighting for a button on the shirt and the entire face, it's gonna feel really, really busy. So what you have to do usually is if you lock that layer, if you alpha lock or transparency lock that layer, and then color those lines in a different color, it'll help change the visual weighting. All these line art tips won't make you a better artist unless you practice. It's better to draw for 10 minutes a day every day than 3 hours once a week. Drawing every day trains your hand and makes it a habit. Once drawing becomes a habit, you won't even need to think about it. Your hand will just flow. Whether it's with a stylus, an ink pen, or a marker, you'll need to practice a lot to get the feel of your line art and train your muscle memory. And make sure to study some days and draw for the sake of enjoyment other days so you don't burn yourself out.
Join a virtual class to learn live from our professional artists. Get creative assignments, individual guidance, and real-time feedback on your artwork. Start today and level up your practice. If you learned something new, like and share this with a fellow art nerd. If you love receiving quality and free arts education, subscribe. Here's a couple other videos you can check out next.